5-cent EPS, earnings per share, on $1 billion
Yeah.
is really, really pathetic. Not from the company. The company's doing great. It's just that figure would be so much higher if they didn't have the 280E taxation.
Hey, everybody. Happy midweek. Welcome to our Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Earnings season continues to roll on. And next up, we've got both GTI and Trulieve, some big heavyweights within the industry. So let's dive right into it. Anthony Barrell, happy day. Happy Wednesday.
How's it going? It's been good. Earnings reports, earnings calls. It's the cannabis sector. While it's I mean, everyone's coming in line. It feels alive. There's just conversation going on around it, which is
busy
good.
week. A lot of comments below. Everybody wants us to cover absolutely everything. We're doing the best that we can, but leave a comment below and let us know if there's anything that we're missing. We'll get to it as quickly as possible. Benjamin A. Smith, lead financial writer. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you guys. Earnings season is upon us.
Yes.
I love it.
All right. So as I said off the top, GTI and Trulieve next up. So let's begin with GTI, whose earnings were pretty much in line with revenue, which was $252 million for the quarter versus estimates of $250.6 million. EPS, they're pretty much the only company that provides this EPS. It was 5 cents a share. Adjusted EBITDA was $76 million, which was the exact same as Q1. So talk about consistency. Cash at quarter end is now $149 million from $185 million sequentially. So when we look at these numbers, Ben, as you said earlier this week, Q2 earnings are usually in line. You look for outliers, but in this case with GTI, not a lot of outliers there, but everything in line. Is this overall, do you think, a net positive for the company?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier on that as long as we didn't receive any outliers or any surprises, notably to the downside, that would be a good thing. And GTI provided basically just that. All the metrics that you mentioned. It was just a very solid quarter. It met analyst expectations, and that's what you want to see. I didn't expect a lot of positive price action based on this or negative price action based on this, and that's the case. GTI is within 2%. Margins were stable. Adjusted EBITDA was stable. Now, they did note some price pressure continuing in the sector, and that's not what you want to hear. But I mean, that's something that's been going on for 2-3 years and not endemic to what GTI is experiencing. So overall, I do think that this is just what I expected, and another solid quarter that what they've met numbers, and I think that's all that we can really expect in these sort of conditions.
Anthony, you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to complain. I mean, they're operating in a hard environment. Cost of capital is high. They're seeing margin compression. I mean, some of these markets are slowly coming online. They came in line, and it's great. I mean, I listened to the conference call. I mean, the one thing that I do like about GTI most is Ben. You can hear it in his voice that he believes in the company. He believes in the business. He's not here to be the CEO. When he talks about the brands, you can hear it in his voice that the man thoroughly believes that Dog Walkers, that Rhythm, those are national brands for GTI, and they'll be coast to coast in the United States. When he's talking about the social impact and how it's kind of, to be honest, bullshit on the conference call, that there's a gentleman sitting in, I think it was in Chicago, there's a gentleman sitting in jail in Chicago for an ounce and a half of marijuana. They sell that every day in their stores. And there's no reason why he should be operating
in jail for an ounce and a half of marijuana.
Ounce and a half of marijuana, nonviolent offender, and he's sitting in there for a max sentence. That amount of marijuana is sold very quickly in one of GTI's dispensaries, and I mean that's a cause that Ben stands for. I mean, he's an activist, he's a CEO, and he's an operator. They're building a machine to produce net income, and I mean it's rare in this sector. They're the only one that's doing it right now, and I think the future definitely bodes well for GTI, especially when you look at the markets that they're going to unlock, potentially going into adult use in the future.
I think that's an important point that you mentioned too, Anthony, that a lot of cannabis executives sort of get the reputation for just being capitalists, for wanting to generate revenue at all costs. But as you noted that, Ben is standing up for, incarcerated persons such as the one you described. Kyle Kazan from Glasshouse Brands, we've had him on, and he's a very, very big advocate of getting people out of jail who are there unjustly for nonviolent offenses. So, I mean, there's a lot of executives that are, staying up to this. And, I'm glad Ben is, using his bullhorn to get this issue out.
Yeah,
So
and
what was
those markets, Chad, by the way, Minnesota, Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, and New York are
wow.
markets that GTI really is in,
Wow.
but they're not fully tapped out as far as potential goes yet, even close to it. So I mean, those are going to be huge growth drivers for what's already a very nice engine that's built to print money.
Look, this is the darling of the space. Do you guys still feel like this is the leader in the industry based on this
Yeah,
company? Either yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I would say that they are the leader from a performance standpoint. If we're going to go on the ability to produce profit, I mean they're great from an operational perspective. I mean they're in all very nice markets. I'd like to see their Florida footprint maybe grow. I mean they've got 9 stores right now. Um,
Does that surprise you at all?
it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, Ben's smart. I mean, he's got to pick and choose his battles, and apparently,
Yeah.
he's pick and chose his battles very well in terms of capex spending and growing the business. I think that he can fight for market share in Florida. I think he's going to have to fight for market share in Florida. Might be waiting for it to go wreck. I don't know, but that's purely on speculation. But I mean, yes, they are they're poised for some serious growth here
Yeah.
in the quarters to come.
Needless to say, a behemoth within the state of Illinois. Another market that they're firing away is in Maryland, based on 3 Rise retail stores opening up in 4 separate states, actually, I should say. But Maryland, as we said earlier this week, continue to turn heads on what they're creating. But what were some of the feedback that you heard, Ben, based on their Maryland presence?
I didn't hear any feedback. I actually did not attend the call. Perhaps Anthony can elucidate a little bit further. Did they talk about Maryland
Yeah,
on the call?
Maryland's it was very brief. I mean, there's been one correlation between all the top MSOs. They're all in Maryland. Maryland is producing right now as of July 1st. All of their dispensaries were open, and I mean it's all systems go in Maryland. It's going to be like we said yesterday. I mean, I think there's going to be some sort of stabilization
Yeah.
in that market. I mean, you might see some decay in just gross revenue that's being produced, but it looks like it's a pretty damn good market as of the start of adult use.
If you were an investor in the company, what was the sentiment like after the earnings call? If there was one or two big takeaways about this company moving forward, what would it be?
They continue to beat the drum that is GTI. They continue to create operational efficiencies. They continue to follow the playbook that Ben and Anthony have built and rolling out. And I mean, they're going to continue to do that. They're going to continue to grow into those markets, build the brand that they think they have with Rhythm and Dog Walkers and their suite of products nationally, and just keep doing what they're doing. That was it. There was no super highs. There was nothing that was really low. Talks of price compression, talks of some seasonality in certain markets, but they literally were the whole time.
Yeah.
We're going to keep running the machine that we've built. We thoroughly believe it's working, and the numbers prove that.
One of the very few, Ben, that create net income, right?
One of the very few, yeah, and I think that's the gold standard of what these companies are to be judged at right now in terms of profitability. Obviously, after all their expenses, if they're able to generate a profit, a true net profit, which is net income, then they're in very, hollow ground. I mean, they're no one else is really doing that. Miramed did for a couple quarters. They've done it
Yeah.
time in, time off. They were a little bit off this quarter, just under that threshold, but GTI is producing that net income, and no one else is really doing that. But I must say that 5-cent EPS, earnings per share, on $1
It's
billion
modest. Yeah.
is really, really pathetic. Not from the company. The company's doing great. It's just that figure would be so much higher if they didn't have the 280E taxation. It would be
There's a
100 million. I don't know. We'd have to do the calculations because I don't think 280 applies to recreational cannabis sales. However, if it goes to Schedule 3, for example, medical markets, 30% of most tier 1 revenues,
Yeah.
30 to 40%. So that's a lot of income tax that they wouldn't have to pay, or business tax that they wouldn't have to pay if the rules were in their favor.
There's our YouTube short clip. That's a great example of what it'd be like if 280E was gone, right?
Yeah, you're talking
Yeah. I
like
mean,
$300 million of revenue that wouldn't be subject to that excise tax, right? Or it would be actually put another way, it would be subject to normal business write downs that would bring the amount owing to a lot less threshold than it is now. So whether that's, I don't know, we're probably at least tens of millions of dollars. I don't know how much,
Yeah.
but a lot.
Chuck Schumer, get it done already. Anyway, let's switch now to Trulieve, who, like GTI, was once again in line. Revenue included $282 million versus a consensus of $280.7 million. SG&A expenses lowered from $96 million from $102 million last quarter. Net loss was much higher based on an impairment charge they took in the quarter. Adjusted EBITDA rose $1 million to $79 million from $78 million sequentially. Gross margins fell to 50% from 52%. And finally, cash at the end of the quarter fell to $160 million from $195 million, respectively. Again, this is copy and paste, right, Ben?
I think so. I kind of like the earnings. I think it was, copy and paste, like you said, in line. They met what analysts expected, and that's the benchmark for me, because analysts are cover these companies, and they got a line right to direct management, and they expect a certain number. If it falls below those thresholds and those metrics, then I start to get I look a little bit more in depth. But everything hit. Revenue hit. They actually lowered their SG&A expenses to 96 million from 102 million, so they're getting more efficient with generating that revenue, which is always good to see. Adjusted EBITDA $1 million higher than it was the previous quarter. Margins did fall a little bit, but I mean that's pretty much endemic along the sector. Most of the operators have experienced some margin decline, and what can you say? They had that big write down, which is not great, but that's a one-time charge. If you strip that out, that one-time impairment
Mm-hmm.
charge, their net loss actually narrowed sequentially. So from an operating performance, I think it was a solid quarter as well.
Yeah, say I mean mimic the same sentiment. I mean, I listened to the earnings call. It was a lot of, hey, we're in line. It's not nothing's bad, nothing's great. We're kind of just going through the motions. But I mean, one thing that I found that was interesting when I was going through the deck on the earnings call was, if you look at revenue, gross profit, and gross margin, it's been down quarter over quarter sequentially since Q1 2022. I mean, that
Really?
from, yeah, I mean, okay, so yes, with the exception of Q1 2022 and Q2 2022, it was 310 to 313
Yeah.
million, but it's went down every quarter um, since then in terms of gross
Since
profit.
Q1 2022, you said?
Yeah, gross profit and gross margin have declined quarter over quarter since Q1 2022.
Hmm.
I mean, that being said, the numbers they're still putting out are impressive. But you've got to be able to, I mean, identify that trend, and where does it stop? I mean, we can't be sitting here 6 quarters from now and being like, the trend is still going on. Where is the stabilization? I don't think that's going to be the case. Q1 2022, I'm pretty sure, was when we were experiencing like peak highs from COVID sales
Yeah.
of cannabis, as it was deemed essential during the pandemic, and we were just coming out of that. But it's something that I'm going to watch now. But one thing that
Is it
I
because
thought
of
was an
more
outlier.
dilution? I was going to say, is it because of dilution in the state of Florida with more dispensaries opening up?
I don't think so. To be honest, I mean, I think it's a function of the assets of Harvest have just been declining, or been in rapid decline
True, good point.
since that acquisition. Kim on the call was actually saying that oil sales were up 21% quarter over quarter, and flower sales were up 9% quarter over quarter in the state of Florida. The earnings call was very Florida centric. Not too much color outside of the state. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's one thing that really does need to be called out is Trulieve needs to make sure that they are very defensible in the state of Florida. It is this company,
Yeah.
with the exception of a couple of assets that they're bringing online outside. I think Georgia is going to be interesting to watch. I think Maryland's going to be interesting to watch,
Yeah.
and PA will be interesting to watch. And they're starting to go into Ohio. So
Now,
those
in
will
terms
be.
of I just want to, sorry to cut you off here, Anthony, but in terms of margin, I think it's important for investors to have a little bit of context. And those are great figures that you brought up, and it's true. The margin profile is declining. But I think 5 or 6 quarters ago, Truly was up around 72% margins, and this was wholly unsustainable. Like there's no way that those sort of and that dovetailed with COVID, like you talked about. So there's huge demand. There wasn't as much supply, and margins exploded. But it was very hugely unsustainable. I think long term, you're going to see margins, sort of dip towards maybe 30 to 35% over the long
Yeah.
term, maybe 40 for like the really strong operators. So none of this should be as a particular surprise or a particular cause for concern. Margins here are still 50%, which are very robust for any
Yeah.
CPG company. But yeah, that's 72% margins would have been nice if it could somehow keep it there or pin it there for the long term. That would be incredible. But
Yeah.
Ben, educate our viewers. Why do you say 30 to 35%?
well, as markets become more mature, there's more, that leads to more competitiveness, and that leads to, commodities becoming commoditized essentially, and prices usually, trend lower over time. So I think it's just, maturing markets. Some of these markets in which they operate are only semi-mature. But as we see in places like Colorado, revenue growth, they experienced revenue growth for a long period of time, and then now it's falling, just
Mhm.
because prices are falling. I think sales are pretty stable there, but I think prices are falling, and that's causing overall revenue profile to fall. So I
Yeah.
think the same thing's going to happen once some of these semi-mature and even novice markets like Maryland, who are just coming online, get more
Yeah.
mature over time.
Also worth mentioning on the earnings call that Kim Rivers believes that once rec is passed in Florida, that she believes this is a $6 billion market. It's a big fat number. So lots of potential for growth like the Trulives and other companies positioned in Florida. But what's your thoughts, Anthony, being a Florida man yourself, about this potentially being a $6 billion market?
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. When you look at the population density, when you look at the amount of tourism that comes through Florida, I mean, you could put a very strong case that that
Mhm.
number is justified. I mean, and Trulieve will be a direct beneficiary or direct recipient and a beneficiary of that market growing. I mean, they've got 127 dispensaries in the state currently. Their closest competitor is Move, and Verano is 70 dispensaries. So that market dominance is there, and it's I think they're going to be a very very big beneficiary of adult use coming online. That being said, the more weeks to go by, I mean, the more friction there seems to be in this ballot initiative coming online in Florida. I don't
Mm.
know if I'd hold my breath on this getting passed, or I think there's a pretty good chance that this can get torpedoed going into the 2024 elections, which would be a
It's
shame.
also worth noting that Kim Rivers mentioned a number of times on the earnings call that, quote, unlike other companies, we pay our taxes on time. She said that a couple times. A little bit of stirring the pot here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of showmanship. She said the first time I got a chuckle out of it. It was like the fourth or fifth time I was like, all right, come on, like we get it. But I mean, yeah, it's just showmanship. It's fun to
Yeah.
see. They got
Yeah.
to spice it up a little bit.
Gotta love a little competition, right?
Yeah.
All right. Who we got up next? We got Curaleaf, and who's next on our earnings
Terrascend,
call
I think, or
tomorrow?
is that
We
next week?
we got no Terrascend is aftermarket tomorrow, and then we've got Canopy Growth pre-market tomorrow.
Canopy, Terrascend, Jushi, Planet 13. We got a long list. Well, I'll cover those off. We should dive into air wellness later this week, and then as well. Once we actually have the earnings call for Canopy Growth, I know a few of our viewers reached out asking us if we're going to cover off on the Tilray earnings from a couple weeks ago. So I think what we'll do is that we'll compare kind of like an apples to apples, knowing they're two Canadian behemoths, but one definitely is,
Canopy, by the way, is today after the bell.
after the bell.
Yeah.
Okay, so the time this recording, we get this out, this will be Wednesday evening. So Canopy's numbers will be out. We'll have those updated for
Yes.
tomorrow, and we will outline obviously Canopy's. Do a little comparison with them and Tilray. Wow, stock ripped, didn't it?
Stock did
Still
rip
ripping.
with Tilray. It's still ripping. Canopy is up actually right now. Oddly enough,
It's what
it's
happens One
Yeah.
has good news, the other benefits. It's the
The question is,
cannabis
how much is
investing world.
Canopy going to lose tonight, though? I think, it's just how bad is it going to be? But I mean, if it's way less bad than the last report or what people expect, maybe it even rips. Maybe it goes up, 15,
Yeah.
20% after hours. Who knows?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I'm really really tempted to play it, but I'm probably not going to
Yeah,
because I have no
I'm
which way
out.
it's going to
That's
go.
not my bag. So
Yeah,
I'm just gonna wait in the sidelines, see what happens.
yeah, and darling of the space right now too, Terrascend. Anxious to see, obviously, their finalized numbers from last week's pre-announcement. We're gonna have Ziad Ghanam on, the CEO of Terrascend, later this week, and here's hoping our good friend of the podcast, Boris Jordan, has good earnings as well with Curaleaf.
it's going to be Terrascend pre-announced, so I'm going to be interested to see where those numbers come in line. I'm assuming it's going to be very 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 close to what they already pre-announced.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
worth noting that this is without Maryland, and this is important because they're at the dispensary cap in Maryland at 4. But in relation to their overall footprint, they're going to get the most leverage out of that because they only have 39 operating dispensaries as opposed to some of the other GTI, for example, with what 200 and some or whatever that number is.
Yeah,
So
uh,
yeah.
yeah,
so the leverage that they're going to get off their overall revenue profile in Maryland is going to be big, and I hear that their stores are very very busy right now. So
and I would
it'll be
assume
interesting to
that
see
we're
next
going to
quarter.
see, and I'd assume that we're going to see growth from Michigan with Terrascend, with that
Yeah.
$260 million number we were talking about
Good point.
yesterday.
And next Monday, August 14th, guess what, for all of our lovely Sundial viewers? We will do an in-depth earnings call wrap-up for Sundial. We will get that on. And a couple comments, too, about can we do a comparable from them and Tilray? You know what? Let's do it, right?
Yeah,
So
might as well.
we'll have that for next Monday. But yeah, on tap, we got Curaleaf, Plant 13, Canopy Growth, Terrascend, Jushi. We'll take a quick recap of Tilray's earnings from 2 weeks ago. And that should pretty much wrap up our earnings report for this week. But gents, I know you're busy at work, taking part in a lot of earnings calls and doing a lot of writing, Ben, as well. Make sure to log on to thedalesreport.com. Got some good editorial pieces out there right now, Ben, and we will keep you guys updated on our Twitter account, which is at the Dales Report, giving you all the latest news because at TDR, we set the narrative. All right, gents.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, talk
Take
soon.
care, guys.
See ya.
What's up, everyone? So what'd you think of the interview? Are there any more questions you want us to ask? Then leave a comment below on information that you want to learn more of. Make sure to share this video with your network and smash that like button. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.